Hello, and welcome to Comic Show Far From Home. I'm Mike.
I'm Vincent.
Dan, your name is alphabetically second.
You didn't tell me we were going alphabetically.
We
Well,
always
It's been
go
so long
alphabetically.
since I've been on one of these.
But also, this is his first time on the show, so it shouldn't have been alphabetical, really.
I mean, his name is Dan, and
Sometimes.
he is continuing the trend that other Dan sets where he forgets that his name is alphabetically first.
All right, we're gonna start over, and I'm gonna do this so we can edit it properly.
I mean, we're not editing this.
That's the joke, Mike.
Cut it in post. Cut it in post. This whole section, Mike, you're gonna edit this out. So this is our show where we talk about comics. This is episode 21. So this show, this podcast, whatever you want to call it, this video log, it can now drink legally in the United States.
Yeah, good.
I mean, that's 21 years.
No one needs to know that, Mike.
I think I'm the only person with a quick haul. I bought this Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes Ultimate Collection, which is the two Joe Casey maxi, well, there are 8 issues series, kind of depicting the history of the Avengers to a certain point. And I got it because it was super, super cheap online and everything, but you can already tell, like,
It's a little beat up there, bud.
yeah, this was marked as, like, let me see, I have the thing here. This was marked as very good, which is like near the top of the level of grading, and I would not rate it very good. And this is also after
very good.
Yeah, the book's all right. And this is after I spent like 2 days with a giant thing on top of it to try and flatten it a little bit. So it's always a gamble. But whatever, it's a fine reading copy, and when it's on the shelf, no one will know. Here's a picture of Janet Van Dyne in her underwear.
I mean, you can also see her in that if you're reading Tony Stark Iron Man.
I want to know because I don't read bad books. Actually,
I mean, I'm not reading it, but like I look at the books while we're talking about them.
All right, so our retro book, as we are calling it, as I call it, this week is Thor 412. This is from, I don't remember, but this is the first full appearance of the New Warriors, one of the greatest superhero teams in Marvel Comics history.
Nope.
Top 10, at least.
Nope.
Yes.
Name 10 teams, and right now.
Well, the emphasis on you because you're a disagreeer. So, what are 10 teams better than the New Warriors?
Avengers, Secret Avengers, U.S. Avengers,
Avengers.
West Coast Avengers.
So the cover date for
Fantastic Four, New Fantastic Four, Savage Avengers.
the cover date for this issue is December 1989. So we're not even in the 90s yet.
X-Men, X-Isles.
This is the classic Thor creative team of Tom DeFalco on plot and script, Ron Frenz on plot and art, and at this point, Joe Sinnott is finishing. And Frenz, in this era of Thor, he's basically going for sort of a Kirby-esque style, and obviously Joe Sinnott, longtime Jack Kirby inker, adds a little bit to that. So it's a very retro style. Again, we're not in the 90s yet, but this style will continue through the 90s. And so some people thought this book was corny because it looked like it was from the early 70s or something.
There's a lot of Kirby in the faces, I noticed.
Yeah. This is an Acts of Vengeance tie-in, which is this kind of stupid event, but kind of cool, where all the villains get together and they're like, we always get beat up by the superheroes we usually fight, but we all exist in the same universe. So what if you go fight this other hero and I'll fight your hero and we'll all win? and of course they all lost. And kind of the core actual Acts of Vengeance story runs in the Avengers books, which at this point, the architect of this whole story was John Byrne, who was writing the main Avengers book at the time. And there's a major Acts of Vengeance multi-title crossover in the Spider-Man books because it coincides with Peter Parker getting the Captain Universe powers and beating people up. And all the other books just had random bullshit. So the Acts of Vengeance villain here messing with Thor is Juggernaut. And we actually missed most of the actual Thor versus Juggernaut fight, which happened last issue. And the Juggernaut beat Thor, but actually it's because Thor has seizures right now, which this book doesn't fully explain in this issue. And the New Warriors, I guess they were teased last issue, probably on the final page, but they officially show up here for their first full appearance in this issue. And they are composed of Nova, who in this entire issue is called Nova. In the early era, pretty much most of the classic New Warriors run, he's known as Kid Nova. And
white, red, and yellow.
Yeah, and he has a weird costume in this era. Not
called Kid Nova somewhere on here.
He might be, but sometimes I call him Nova.
Oh, it's on the cover where he's called Kid Nova.
Yeah. Marvel Boy, and so obviously Nova had his own series in the 70s. He's a teen hero. Everyone knows Nova. Marvel Boy was a character who first appeared. Well, I don't know if this is actually where he first appeared, but mostly known as a supporting character in the Thing solo series. After John Byrne left, he kind of acted as the Thing's sidekick while the Thing was part of a wrestling promotion. And that was also the introduction of Sharon Ventura and D-Man. Those kinds of characters were introduced in that era. And Namorita, obviously related to Namor and shit like that. Speedball, wacky Steve Ditko, 80s creation, which it's not really a conspiracy theory. Basically, it's known that I believe Tom DeFalco, who writes this issue, not accidentally, but he fucked up and gave like half of the budget for what was supposed to be the new universe to create Speedball. And so they just had Steve Ditko, who was like by the 80s considered like non-interesting and washed up, just create a fuckload of Speedball stories.
So he was non-interesting and washed up, and they paid him a shitload of money to make a non-interesting character?
Yeah, essentially. But Speedball is awesome.
No, he's not.
Then there's Firestar, who obviously a lot of people mainstream know her from Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. But in the comics, she's mostly more connected to the X-Men. And Chris Claremont had her as pretty much the most prominent member of the Hellions, which was Emma Frost's kind of counter school. And she had her own miniseries and stuff. And the leader of the team, which is not really that clear in this issue, but their sort of leader and the new character, which was created just for this team, is Night Thrasher, who is a really cool character.
Once again, no.
He's a teenage African-American Batman on a skateboard. That's pretty
He's not
awesome.
Batman.
And yeah, Nova is in a weird costume, and so is Marvel Boy. I feel like most people know Marvel Boy when he eventually, like his hair sticks out of the top of his costume. At this point, he has a full head mask, and he looks kind of dorky.
He looks like any create your own superhero from like the parts they give you in like any crappy game.
Yeah, he's really generic. It's just blue and white, full head mask, cape. Also, he kind of acts like a pussy in this issue.
He always is.
Eventually he, has a full relationship with Firestar, and eventually they join the Avengers. There's some development that all these characters go through.
Yeah, and Firestar gets cancer from her own powers and dies.
But here there's scenes where he like stutters. It's kind of weird. And also in this early era, his powers are kind of pretty weak and ineffectual because he hasn't had that like, the dumb like moments where you're high and you're like, whoa, Iceman is super fucking strong. He hasn't figured out that his powers are very, very versatile. And so Firestar, with her X-Men background, she's familiar with Juggernaut. Speedball jumps in because he's cocky and is in, he's only been in these wacky stories in this small town. So he tries to jump at the Juggernaut and just gets fucking whacked into space. Nova and Namorita, who are kind of the heavy hitters here, they get foiled. And Juggernaut jokes, a costumed good guy on a skateboard. Now I've seen it all. And Night Thrasher, I guess, hops on his skateboard and grinds on the Punisher's back. Pretty cool visual. I mean, all things considered, the fact that he has a skateboard and like batons and shit, Friends and Senate doing some pretty good fight choreography for a stupid teenager on a skateboard. And Night Thrasher loses his cool, and Firestar also has no idea how her powers really work. And then the two heavy hitters again throw train cars at him, and there's just a giant explosion. But of course, the Juggernaut's fine. He's a Juggernaut. But thankfully now Thor is fine, and he calls a Thunderbolt down on Juggernaut, and Juggernaut's like, yeah, that doesn't do anything at all either.
3/4 of the way through a Thor book, Thor finally does something.
Yep. And so Thor summons the God Force, which is just Deus Ex Machina power when he's fighting crazy foes. As he references, he has to call this out against the Juggernaut when before he's used it against Galactus and Celestials. And they trap him in molten steel, which is kind of metal, pun intended. And then Thor just teleports the Juggernaut out into a random spot in space. So Juggernaut's just in space. Somehow he's going to get back in. And the issue ends with Thor co-signing the New Warriors. He's like, these little teens are going to be some serious business. And there's also some subplot about Eric Masterson's custody battles. And his ex-wife shows up for the first time in this issue, even though you don't see her face. Because Thor is currently already merged with Eric Masterson. But it's not like Eric Masterson is the dominant persona. It's not worth really getting into. But eventually, Eric Masterson will become the dominant persona. Then he'll split and become Thunderbolt and everything like that. And the Thor versus Juggernaut matchup in this era of the Tom DeFalco run, Friends run, which is pretty long across Thor and then Thunderstrike, Juggernaut fights him like 3 times overall and was always like a big moment, like, ooh, the Juggernaut's back. Mike has a irrational prejudice against the New Warriors.
It's not irrational. They're not a cool team. The only character that's cool is Firestar.
Night Thrasher's pretty awesome.
No.
Nova's really awesome. Speedball.
Nova doesn't get to be awesome until like 25 years after this book.
Namorita. And this is one of my favorite runs of Thor, the DeFalco Friends. I put this like Kirby, Simonson, DeFalco Friends. That's the Thor trinity for me. What did you guys think besides the New Warrior stuff? Even though that's really 90% of the book.
I mean, I think you baited me once again in trying to read New Warriors trash, which this was. Yeah, I don't like DeFalco's writing in here. I like the art though. I think it's just very, very basic, kind of hokey comic books. I think like by this point in time, you have more detailed and more complicated plot structures than this. And that's more what I prefer. I feel like it's very kind of Silver Agey 60s throwback.
You're not wrong.
Yeah, I know I'm not.
You know, I'm pretty sure the whole plot of lead the Juggernaut into a construction site and then trap him in something so he can't move. I feel like that happened in maybe Spider-Man before this. And once it got to that point, I kind of just lost interest in the book because I was like, this already got done. And I already read that.
Yeah, well, I mean, what else can you do?
I mean, he could have just teleported him right away. It was cool to literally throw some girders on him and then just melt it around him and basically make a Juggernaut mold. But
It's kind of insane because, I mean, I guess, they're not necessarily molding it like within a millimeter of his skin. But like when you really think about it, it's like even though he's unstoppable and he's going to break out, like that has to be scary as fuck to get molded into a giant chunk of molten steel.
I feel like Juggernaut's just been through worse stuff, though. Like, he seems like he knows he's unstoppable, so I feel like he just doesn't have any fear.
And yeah, he had to go through X-Men 3.
Yeah,
And
I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure he was encased in that for all of, encased in the thing of metal for maybe, 10 seconds.
I'm never certain on all the, actually how Juggernaut's, bullshit powers work. But, he's trapped in metal. It's not that long, but, is he breathing in there?
I thought he didn't have to.
Etc.
Again, that is going back to, how do his powers work and all.
Yeah, who knows? I really enjoyed this. You can find this in some Epic collection. Probably the first DeFalco one. Actually, maybe the second one. Just primo stuff. This is in the Immortal Flesh Epic Collection, which is Thor Epic Collection Volume 17. And so far, there are 3 Epic Collections of the DeFalco and Friends era. And I would like, I think, either 1 or 2 more until basically until their run ends, and then it moves over into Thunderstrike. That's the retro book.
What's one book next week?
I'm now doing it at the end of the shows most of the time.
That's true, because you forget to do it before.
Yes, because it's more of a surprise. So you gotta sit through this whole video, and we'll tell you at the end, because I know everyone is excited to hear each week what we're going to talk about.
I'm excited to hear each week, and then he makes it a New Warriors stuff, and I hate it.
Also, I don't think we actually agreed on this necessarily. I just brought it up, but I have made an executive decision that now. So I random number generator the year, the month, the company, or company category, as it were, in certain cases with independents. But then, rather than, especially in certain years, wading through a random number generator of 90 Marvel books in a single month, I'm just going to look at the list and I'm going to choose one that I think might be interesting. And that'll especially help whenever indie books come up.
I mean, we've only ever had one indie book, right?
Yeah.
Which is disappointing. I wish we would have gotten more.
Well, it gets complicated when it's an indie book pre-1985.
Yeah.
Because then it's let's read a book from Harvey Comics. Let's read Casper the Friendly Ghost. But
I mean, I would totally be down to do that for October.
But we'll get some fun stuff.
But hey, speaking of indie books, though, we're going to talk about some. Kicking things off, I have Buffy the Vampire Slayer #6 by Jordi Belair and David Lopez. David Lopez is still on art for the second arc of the relaunched Buffy, and it's still really rough. There are some really bad faces in this book. But Buffy and Willow are in the woods out in Sunnydale to try and hunt for a soul for Xander, as he got turned into a vampire, and they need to get him a soul back and try to turn him back to normal. We get some stuff with Giles and Jenny Calendar talking about how Giles views his role as the Watcher, showing that he actually does give Buffy her limits to go do what she wants, and he isn't her father. Which ultimately he kind of did become her father by the end of the show. but I thought that was a good moment there. Robin Wood just shows up in the middle of the forest because he just got a text alert from from one of them. So he just shows up and he's like, "Oh, I have no idea what's going on. This is all really weird, but okay." And so he just kind of rolls with it. And when Willow ends up giving part of her soul to a demon for Xander to become human again. And at the end of the book, it's revealed that Robin Wood is actually kind of a sleeper agent for one of the demon councils. So like he's like kind of working his way into Buffy's friend group, and he's gonna obviously plan to take out Buffy and her friends. This was a good building issue. I liked all the character work here. Still really fun book. I'd like to see better art from Lopez. It's the faces are really really rough, but the colors are fantastic.
I think we've discussed this, but Dan Moore is not coming back, right?
I did not know that.
Yeah, they pulled him away to do an indie book, still at Boom, with Kieran Gillen.
That's disappointing because his first arc was really good.
It's some kind of fantasy concept. I forget what it is, but
hey, at least I still like what Jordy Blair's doing with the characters and putting a new spin on it. Same goes for the Angel book, but that's all I got to say on Buffy this week. It's more of a building issue.
Cool.
Time for No One Left to Fight?
Yeah.
It is.
Nice.
The comic you always wanted.
That is right on the cover. Just nice pop for you.
Is it true?
I like the concept, and for people that haven't heard about this yet, this is a new series from Dark Horse, and the basic idea is if you took Dragon Ball Z and you had these people that were incredibly strong and always fighting people, what happens when you're the strongest person in the universe, and like what do you do next? So that's the basic concept behind this. It's written by Aubrey Sitterson and drawn and I believe colored by, oh god, this is not going to go well, Fico Osio. But it's pretty cool.
That's how I would pronounce it.
I'm thinking that's it. I'm sorry if I got that wrong. But yeah, this was a pretty interesting first issue. The art I think is really good, and I especially like the colors. Everything's really vibrant, and there's like just a lot of not attention to detail, but like a lot of detail in all of the characters. And speaking of characters, you just get introduced to so many people right away. It's what most of the issue is about. Just the main Goku character is Vale. He has this like almost like pink hair. He has some crab friend named Fargon 6, who wears sunglasses, but like below his eye stalks. It's kind of weird. And he's visiting his, I'm guessing, Vegeta rival, whose name is Timur, his family. So basically, like, you can kind of tell what every character is if you've seen like Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z and like kind of understand that. There's a few like differences, obviously, but basically this entire issue is just kind of setting up the world, letting you know who all these people are, having some interactions, and of course you get a nice Vale and Timur fight towards the end of the book. And basically with where we're set up, Vale already defeated some crazy strong person who was probably threatening world, whose name was Gore Despo. And it's kind of setting it up like Timur might have like PTSD or something from it, or experiences weird hallucinations. It's a little confusing, but
or his friend just kind of picks the fight because he's an asshole. Like,
oh well, yeah, 100%.
Very Vegeta, like, I'm jealous of how powerful you are. I'm gonna and because his kids are like literally fighting over wanting to be Vale and like.
Oh yeah. It's one of those things where like there's two kids and it's like, no, I want to be Vale. No, I want to be Vale. And of course, like Timur, the dad's over there, just like, motherfucker, this guy. And I feel like the Timur also feels like Vale wants to bang his wife. I was getting that vibe a little bit in the middle somewhere.
Uh, I didn't get that,
It
but
you can tell that they're very close, and it seems like it's a Goku Bulma relationship where they've
oh,
probably
it
known each
truly is.
other for a very long time. And I think Timur just feels insecure in general, comparing himself to Vale, like say Vegeta might to Goku. So I think it just kind of creeps into it, even though it might not actually be there.
Yeah, so I really have no background with Dragon Ball whatsoever. I know that's clearly like what this is kind of homaging. So I didn't really pick up on a lot of the stuff besides like the very basic stuff that I know. I thought the art was cool, but it's also just totally personally not my style.
Mhm.
This book didn't interest me a ton.
Yeah. I will
Um,
say though, they did get a very nice Dragon Ball esque ending page where it
yeah,
has Vale's about to get blasted away by Timur during their sparring fight, and it says like, "Can Vale survive Timur's blast barrage? What's behind Vale's strange affliction? Next time in, no one left to fight."
yeah, it's a
So
very to be
it's a
continued.
very nice homage. I'm
Um,
certainly interested in where this is going. I think I hyped this up a little bit too much in my head though, so I was a little disappointed with the slow pacing, but it makes sense with all the characters you have to establish and like the world you kind of have to start building.
yeah,
I
I'll
I
quickly.
wanted to like this book. I
Hmm?
didn't love it. I didn't love it. I wanted to love it. Didn't
That's
love it.
fair.
I thought you said slow pacing. I thought we were just dropped right in and all right, boom, here we go. I felt like I didn't really get to know or learn anyone, and I was like, all right, that's Goku, that's Vegeta, that's Bulma.
I think this book relies heavily on you having watched Dragon Ball Z at some point in your life and understanding like the interpersonal dynamics that the characters have there, and then being able to figure out, okay, this is this person's this person, and from there you can fill in a lot of blanks. But I do agree it was a very hit and run with the character development. Just like, here's this person, here's some dialogue they have between someone else.
And I also thought it was a little bit, if this makes sense, it was a little bit too much of an homage. I would have liked to see a little bit more originality in it.
I think we're gonna get that in the
Yeah,
future
I
because
hope
if
we
nothing
do.
else,
I mean,
on the
one of my
cover, what's the girl's name? The Bulma figure.
I can't remember.
Really hard. Either way, on the cover, and she has like a robotic arm, and on the cover she has a giant sword. So I'm assuming she actually fights at some point or another.
Yeah,
So I think eventually we're gonna diverge more. I think it's just for this issue they probably wanted to try and keep things kind of condensed and generate interest by saying, here's this thing that's kind of familiar but different, and then slowly get away from it and make it its own thing down the line once there's a following.
yeah. I thought the art was the art and colors were fantastic.
Loved it.
Not this style isn't normally my go-to or one of my favorites, but I think it totally fits the book,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's really really good. I like the world building here. I like the architecture and the styles in the cities.
Mm-hmm.
So
They also do a pretty good job, I thought at least, of kind of making the fight scenes almost look like a Dragon Ball fight scene,
yeah,
where you get just two people really close together and just punching. And I think they did a pretty good job of that.
Sitterson is a former Marvel editor. Um, maybe one of his more notable things, he was the editor on most of Jason Aaron's Ghost Rider. And then he moved into writing. And before this, he spent a ton of time at IDW on their G.I. Joe books. And there was some minor controversy because he made an offhand comment on social media about 9/11 and,
oh,
and how people commemorate 9/11, et cetera, et cetera. And the G.I. Joe fan base just like went rabid on him and kind of like pushed him off the book. And now I guess this is his major actually creator owned thing. He also has very long hair and kind of interesting to follow on social media because he posts a lot of like old comics and stuff that he's checking out.
Interesting.
Fico Asio on the art side, I've never heard of this dude. And again, I thought I thought it was a really cool, unique style. It's not necessarily my kind of thing. But we have another creator-owned debut this week.
That we do. And if it's what I'm thinking it is, that would be Sea of Stars.
Correct.
And this is a new book from Jason Aaron, and it's drawn by Dennis Hallam. It's from Image.
No.
Well, it's Dennis Hallam's a co-writer.
I just didn't. Yep. Okay. I probably should have scrolled to the actual what's it called, title page instead of just looking at the.
And Dennis Hallam, previously known and sometimes known as Dennis Hopeless. Clearly was a fake name. I don't know why he wanted to use a fake name in the first place. Maybe he was trying to pull a Stan Lee and it's like, let me not use my real name in this dumb comic shit. But now that he wants to make a serious career out of comics, he's like, let me take my real name in here. But it's hard to switch your stage name.
I mean, I always liked Dennis Hopeless. I always thought he was a pretty solid writer.
Yeah. No, nothing about that. I mean, I don't fully understand the name.
Yeah, I'm agreeing. Like I thought the Hopeless name was I thought it was like kind of funny, tongue in cheek. But I mean, if he wants to go back to Hallam, I mean, by all means.
I will say the artist is Stephen Green, then, as I can actually read now and am making better choices with my life. So, like I said, new number 1. Basic overview of the story. There's a dad and his son, and they're on a space freighter. The dad is a basically space truck driver, and he's hauling some museum stuff. The son is bored out of his mind, as you might be able to imagine. Some giant space animal whale squid thing attacks their freighter, and the son gets blasted off into space, but he touched some weird artifact from the museum thing, and that kind of blew the ship up a little bit, caused the space creature to fly away, I think, and also let him breathe and swim in space. And I will point out that there is a line where some creature he encounters after waking up on an asteroid says, he can breathe space air just like us, which I thought was just really weird. Just don't get that.
Don't think too hard.
It's one of those things where it's don't think too hard, but at the same time, I'm just like, you went with space air. But either way, after that, he goes off adventuring with some monkey-looking thing and some whale-looking thing. They're gonna find some food because they're all hungry. And then after that, we cut away and we find out that the dad actually survived, and it seems to be stuck on an asteroid, and he is very intent on finding his son, and it looks like he's about to be attacked by some weird gray, kind of scary looking creatures. But I liked this book a lot more than I thought I was gonna. Really excited to see where it goes after this. I know Mike has privately already said he's definitely going to read the second issue. I think I will too, just to see where it gets to and kind of see the direction as it gets a bit more fleshed out. But yeah. Also, there was a really kind of dumb little throwaway thing that I might be reading way too much into. But the kid is trying to, like I said, he's bored out of his mind, so he tries to play games or something on some handheld thing, and it just says, no service, games not available. And I took that as a really fun way to say, buy physical, kids. Physicals forever.
Yeah, I like this too. I think this is this would be my runner-up pick of the week. It's always interesting when you see co-writing, because it's like who's in the pilot seat. I don't know if this is a situation where Jason Aaron, they had a beer at a bar and kind of came up with a rough idea, and then Jason Aaron's like, I don't have time for this shit. You go along and I'll put my name on the first trade to bump the sales or something. I don't know. Hopeless, not obviously, because no one read it. He did a Nova run, connecting back to our retro book with Kid Nova. He did a Nova run which featured both Rich and Sam and it had art by Ramon Perez, and it only lasted like 8 issues, but it was really, really good. And he also did, I think he wrote the Groot solo book, so I think he has a little bit of a leaning towards this kind of cosmic stuff. And I thought it was fun here there's no real actual science, as Dan joked about with Space Air. I think the kid has a really fun personality. He's not annoying. He's inquisitive and is kind of derpy. And the art is fantastic from Steve Green. And the book also has some cool design stuff. The logo is really good, and there's some other design elements in the credits pages and elsewhere, which are nice. I think this is a great package overall, and I'm interested to keep following it.
I'm gonna piggyback and right off of what Viv said, even going to the point of this was also almost my pick of the week as well. And this was on my fence on whether I was going to read this week. I was happy I actually read it. Vince, you mentioned the designs. I love the design of all the ships. Like they're very like it's a mixture of spaceship with classic boat ships. So like all the ships have like these big grand sails and wings and tails attached to them. Really cool, inventive design. And I love Green's sense of scope with space, where you're getting these huge spread and splash pages, just capturing these beautiful backgrounds. I love this art in this book. It's breathtakingly beautiful.
And I'll also add on to that. Rico Renzi is the colorist, and honestly, the colors are great. Instead of like a usual blackness for space, it's all like shades of pink and purple, and I think that really kind of helps tie like the aesthetic and honestly like other colors together as well, and it just looks really good.
Yeah, there's some of these double page splashes I'd love to just like put on a wall because they're so nice.
Yeah, and like you were mentioning designs of the ships, like even the designs of these like alien creatures, I think are really cool.
I like
they evoke like, oh, this, like I said, like this kind of looks like a monkey and this kind of looks like a whale, but like you can very easily tell that they are not even close.
I even like the dad's work uniform. Like you can see it's got like these nuts and bolts and stuff on it. It's very like machinery like. It makes sense, but like it's still at the same time he's like wearing a trucker cap.
Yeah.
I really like it.
Yeah, they even have like trucker talk on like radios and stuff, which is a kind of neat little thing. You know, they even have like call signs and like whatever they call their own ship.
So our next indie book is Section 0, number 4. And this is where I'm starting to, I don't know, this series is weird because as we discussed, the previous 3 issues were literally just reprints of issues that already came out 19 years ago. But that series from 2000, published by Image imprint Guerrilla Comics, short-lived, like a little mini company, only had 3 issues come out. So now we're at Section 0, number 4, and what the hell happens? There's an 18-year time skip to the present day of 2019. So I guess this is where they picked back up, and this is where the crowdfunding stuff happens, and this is current work by Kiesel and Grummett. And I don't honestly even remember exactly where we left off with issue 3. I feel like there were things that were not resolved, and I assume that they'll come back to those. But the Bug Boy, I forget his stupid code name, is now an adult. He has a gay relationship with some new character that we haven't met before, and this new character has like a demon hand. It's kind of like, I mean, it's sort of like Hellboy or something, but the demon hand, like he doesn't fully control it. So like he wears a glove, and these things rip off his glove at some point because they have no idea what's under the glove, and his hand like goes out of control. And they're busting up a daycare, which is actually a haven for changelings. So instead of these toddlers are actually like these like goblin creatures. And there's also a Russian dog, which is like invulnerable. And the ringleader of this daycare is a Selkie from Irish folklore. and her second skin she disguises as a fur coat. And they think that they're going to be able to find Tina Challenger, who disappeared either in the second or the third issue 18 years ago. And at the end, they reconnect with Sargasso, who's like the big like fish, frog, swamp monster kind of thing, who was a good guy way back then, and now he's like the head of some underwater kingdom. I don't know. It's the same as every issue. It's pulpy, like dated, early '90s Kiesel and Grummet Challenge of the Unknown ripoff, and I enjoy it on that level. But the 18-year time skip really caught me off guard. And I'm excited to get my backer rewards. I don't know when the hell that happens.
Yeah, you'll have to let us know when that happens officially.
I'm sure I'll show it off in a Hall segment on this show.
All right, we got Thumbs by part 2 by Sean Lewis and Hayden Sherman. Agent Thumbs is back on the mend, and he's going to track down kind of what was going on after the attack in the first issue, and he's rummaging through the sewers where he sees like the slums of this AI world, and like all of these people are just plugged into machines, and so much so that they're living their actual lives completely like plugged in. So like these people are just like gross, disgusting, and dirty, and like decaying because they're fully just like engrossed in their AI lives aside from real life. And then he gets attacked by these motorbike agents, and he takes those guys out. And eventually that leads him to his own house, where I think where it was implied I think he met up with his sister, and then a bunch of agents swarm in and kill them, and then he has to kill his, and like in this society, AI raises kids, so like, and they call it like the mom AI droid. So and they're raised by that, so he has to kill that, and then like they're all getting swarmed by these other agents that are coming out. This is very like Blade Runner-y. I know Dan and I talked about it. McNamara, not Ginger Dan, because this is his first episode. We talked about it in the first issue. This is very, very kind of Blade Runner-esque, dystopian. We like it. I still like it. I'm very interested to see where it's all going. And the art still is fantastic. Not much to say here, just because I'm really waiting to see how it's all going to play out, and I think it'll make a lot more sense once it's all told at its end. But still liking Thumbs. It's a very, very interesting concept. And then ending up, and is this the ending of Indie Corner? It is Indie Corner. We have The Walking Dead number 193, which is the final issue of The Walking Dead. Vince, 3 major comics pillars ended this week.
3?
Vertigo's gone, Mad Magazine's gone, and The Walking Dead are gone.
Well, I think Vertigo wasn't exactly this week.
I think this is the final week of The Offices, though.
Oh, I have no idea. I think some books are still coming out though, but they're all done and everything. They just haven't released.
But so yeah, this is the final issue of The Walking Dead. After 15 years, Kirkman and Adler are done. The story they set out to tell has been told. Obviously, Tony Moore did the first 6 issues, but no work from him here, at least in the inside. But spoilers for the last issue: Rick Grimes was shot by Sebastian Milton and died, and we open up with a time skip here with Old Man Carl, who's Rick's son, who they now live in a society kind of set up like it's a fully formed society, but with like Old West kind of think like Old West mixed with Fallout kind of way they means to get. So they don't have cars anymore. They have like they ride on horses to get from place to place. Still no electricity, kind of very simple way of life, but to the point where like they've kind of solved the zombie crisis. They have multiple checkpoints set up for the walkers, so they can't get anywhere. But Carl ends up seeing a roamer that got through, and he kills it with Michonne's sword. And it turns out that it's Herschel. Herschel's one of his roamers from his traveling show he turns around. So the whole issue is about basically Carl going to a hearing because there has to be because he ended up destroying essentially what was Herschel's property and his business because of this because he goes around and tours off and shows off the dead. And as weird as that is, and now we live in a society where, yeah, even though we fought these things for so many years, now people want to see him and pay money for him. Eventually, this leads all the way up to, at night, Carl goes out and kills the rest of them, and he's a messenger runner, so right before he goes on a trip, so he leaves town right before they can get him, and he goes on another messaging mission. He comes back, and then he has a hearing where Michonne's a judge now at their high city, and she just lets him off, going with, yeah, she's never been a fan of taking care of the dead and roaming them around, and it's a testament to like what Rick Grimes did building this new society. We shouldn't be carrying these people around because it is a danger to everyone else. And Carl wins, and then he goes back to his home and starts reading the story of The Walking Dead to his daughter, Andrea. And in this future, Carl's married to Sophia, and that Andrea is their 6-year-old daughter. So the whole time, Carl was reading to his daughter the story of The Walking Dead. So the whole book has been old man Carl reading. I thought this was a pretty good ending. It's a really long issue. It's like 70 pages of story here. Obviously, glossing over a lot of it. I really like the character moments. I read the first 2 compendiums of The Walking Dead, so I haven't read beyond that, but I was able to jump back in and quickly identify with whoever one was again pretty fast. And not having read it for a long time, it was still a really good issue. Adler's still's great. Kirkman's writing's top notch. And then I haven't read all of it, but like Kirkman writes like an over 5-page goodbye in the back of the book. Like it's a very long goodbye to the series. So yeah, 15 years. What was the biggest indie book at the time is now concluded. What's next for Robert Kirkman? I have no idea.
Because Invincible ended as well, obviously, like probably almost a year ago at this point, or more. Kirkman, this is 193. He will not hit there. I think there's no chance in his career he will hit the 300 mark because he's not going to do another series for 300 issues. And so he has fallen. Obviously, we know Spawn is going to hit that, even though Todd has not been involved in all 300 issues. And one assumes at some point Eric Larson will hit that, and he will be the closest legitimate contender up there with Dave Sim. I just quickly went to the Walking Dead Wikipedia page for the comic, and I think it's interesting to note that Robert Kirkman lettered the first 19 issues himself.
Oh wow!
And then they got on Russ Wooten. And Aubrey Sitterson, writer of No One Left to Fight, edited issues 55 through 70 of The Walking Dead. But end of an era, and the next book is kind of relevant.
Yeah, I didn't plan for it to sync up this way, but going into DC, we have Deceased number 3, which I'm gonna state they're not zombies. They're people that have been overtaken by the anti-life equation. They're not zombies. The opening is what?
Zombies. All the covers make it look like they're zombies.
Yeah, but they're not. What's funny is Batman's on the cover punching zombies. See, now I said it. Punching one of the infected people in the face, but he died last issue.
Yeah, I don't know how that works.
But Alfred's mourning the loss of all of his sons, from the Batcave. The only member of the Bat family, I guess the core Bat family, still alive now is Damian. Damian and John Kent are on top of the Daily Planet with Lois Lane and Superman, along with Black Canary, who is now Green Lantern, and Green Arrow. Harley kills the Joker by taking a shotgun and shooting him in half. In a scene that's very like played as like, I'm done with all the horrible things you've done to me. And then she's attacked by a infected Birds of Prey.
Who's in that Birds of Prey?
Catwoman, Huntress, Batwoman, and Batgirl.
Okay.
Superman and Lois are trying to plan their next move as they're stranded on top of the Daily Planet. Superman goes and basically cordons it off to protect everyone. He has to kill Perry White, and then he goes to check on Ma Kent, where it's shown that Pa Kent is infected, and he has to kill Pa Kent, and then he brings Ma Kent to the Daily Planet. And Aquaman's infected and takes out Tempest. So
This sounds awful.
twice now, a zombie like Aquaman kill his sidekick.
It sounds awful.
It's fun. I like this. Is not terrible. I like this. Mara's left stranded, so there is a cool moment where Superman teams up with Black Lightning as he's shooting infected monsters out of a helicopter with his kids. But I think the art is actually the showcase of the book. Really, really good. Like, the Superman looks great in this book. Like, it looks how Superman should look. Tom Taylor's having fun. His thing is kind of having to play. He gets to play around in his own DC universes with this, and previously with the in the Injustice fighting game books. So I don't know. I know you hate this, but you haven't read it. But yeah, it's not terrible. It could be far worse.
No, I'm sure it's a well executed comic book, and there's interesting stuff. I just don't like the premise. It's just not my cup of tea. I saw. Do they name her? Is she called like Green Canary or anything like that?
I can't remember.
Yeah.
I like the design though. The design for her Green Lantern costume is actually pretty cool.
Yeah. What's crazy is I saw someone cosplaying, or I saw online, someone had cosplayed that character like the weekend after her first appearance, and it was like really on point costume.
That's like a guy who did Flash Year One the week of that first issue coming out. But the covers, of course, were released, so they had time to prepare and look at it. Dan, you're up.
All right, I guess it's time for Doom Patrol. So This is technically a new #1, Doom Patrol: Weight of the Worlds from DC's Young Animal. I say technically because it's really the 13th issue, and they actually kind of address that in the second of 2 little title panels, I guess you could say. And it says issue 13 on it. But for those that don't know, DC's imprint Young Animal, the 4 original books got retitled and then obviously renumbered after the Milk Wars crossover with the main DC universe, whenever that happened. But basically the stories are just continuing out of that. So, you know, this kind of hinges on you having read the first 12 issues of the original Young Animal Doom Patrol series and then Milk Wars, but they give you plenty of catch up, and there's a lot of almost like editorial panels, like an asterisk and like, see this issue, or like Casey is also fictional. There's a lot of this character's fictional, this character isn't, because there's a really surprising number of fictional characters in this book. And like, not fictional as in, oh, it's a comic book, they're all fictional. Like, some of them are canonically fictional in the universe that it is taking place, which is just kind of a Doom Patrol thing. But we open up and we have the human Cliff Steele that was introduced either in Milk Wars or at the very end of Gerard Way's original series. I don't quite remember. I will note there's a new artist, James Harvey, for this series. I'm assuming he's going to be the a consistent artist going through and forward. But yep, basically plot is just like I said, taking off and kind of running from Doom Patrol 12 and Milk Wars. You get introductions to all the characters that we've already been seeing, like I said, Cliff Steele, Casey Brink, who drives the ambulance, Negative Man, which you get to see an interesting scene of how after last series he starts to have full lives in between whenever the negative spirit is out and about doing stuff, and you can tell this one he's in a war somewhere, and he's pretty calm about it, but he gets an emotional support animal. It's a dog named Hank. I thought that was kind of weird.
I like that. It was cool.
It's weird, but I also really enjoy that he has a dog that he just is the world for him now, and it's neat. Dog comes back later, obviously, like goes on missions and stuff. Kind of cool. Crazy Jane's around. She's just being Jane. She's the leader of the Doom Patrol now. And then they go off in a mission in Danny. I think they eventually pick up Flex Mentallo, and I would say huge spoiler from Milk Wars, but Rhea Farr is back in continuity now. She was off being Space Christ or something. I read Milk Wars. I'm still not really sure what happened.
I don't know what happened in this issue.
Yeah, I like this issue, but I don't know what the hell is going on.
And that, my friends, I think is the point of Doom Patrol ever since Grant Morrison got his hands on it.
But this, to me, this also reads like issue 13.
Yeah, and like I said, like they address, like they even call it issue 13 in the book, which I thought was nice because you can, like, just because it gets a renumbering, like it's still continuing the same plot lines more or less. You also get to see one of the newer characters that I believe Gerard Way created, Lucius, who's like I don't know, he's like a mage or something. It actually is like kind of interesting story if you followed issues 1 through 12. There's also Lotion the cat, who is human-sized and a rebellious teen with angst and stuff. Again, a part of Doom Patrol is not making sense.
Like, sentence
you just have to accept it.
The sentence introducing him is, Lotion is a man-cat with his own free will.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right.
Yeah, no, if you haven't read the first 12 issues, it's just extra confusing. There's also the caption "Fug is Fug." I'm still not even sure who Fug is.
There's a moment where Cliff Steele presents his ID to someone, and it's his Robot Man identity, and they just roll with it.
Cliff Steele. So, I guess Rita thinks that everyone needs a vacation or something, so they drive Danny the ambulance to, I think it's like Orbulon or something weird like that.
Oh, by the way, loved the fact that inside the ambulance it's a theme park.
Yeah, that's Danny, because it's Danny the ambulance, but inside Danny the ambulance is Danny Land, which is still Danny, who used to be a sentient street, then became a sentient world, was a sentient brick for a while, and now he's an ambulance with a world inside of him who can create real people like Casey Brink, who drives her father, and is fictional. Again, nothing makes sense. But they go to some planet like Orbulon or Orb something or another, where the Marathon Eternal is about to start. And basically there's some like guy pretending to be a god that is making these people work out so they're not literal spheres. And there's like one dissident who's like, spheres are our natural shape, we should be spheres. And everyone else is just like, blasphemy, work out until we're hot. And yeah, and in the middle of this, like you mentioned, Cliff goes to a nursing home now that he's human and visits his mom. And yeah, he has to present identification, and it's a Doom Patrol ID. And it's Robot Man. He just says, like, it's been a while since I updated the photo, and just no one cares. But I think in like staying consistent with how Gerard Way's Doom Patrol run has been, if you look at the details, there's some kind of funny stuff. Like apparently Cliff Steele is not just Cliff Steele, he's Cliff Steele Esquire. It's another power I guess he has, or at least a skill set, alias Robot Man. It's a little cut off by the thumb, but there's something after wait that says fluctuates more often than I'd like. Wait, are you writing this down? And it's just one of those things. It's just, like kind of dumb, but it's neat if you like look into it. There's also Home. If found unconscious, return to Dannyland.
Yeah.
But after that little interlude, we cut back to let's see, the planet is Orbius, and they start fighting the weird god guy, and Lucius the mage finds some other person on the other plane of existence, and it's the actual god of the planet. That and this happens later. We're cutting back and forth between Orbius and Cliff Steele, but basically on Orbius, this guy shunned the real god into an alternate dimension, and is just a guy that gets cuts from like an exercise equipment company or something for like selling stuff. So again, it's one of those plots that is just like kind of weird and like out of the blue, but is interesting, I guess. I don't know. I still liked it. Cliff has some personal stuff where he's talking to his mom, and basically his mom is like, "Fuck you, you're too late. I don't want to see you anymore," and he just kind of leaves sad.
He's pretty sad because then he does something a little crazy.
Oh yeah, no, this is classic, classic Cliff Steele at the end. But back on Orbius, just finishing up. Everyone's a sphere again. There's a really cool full page where you kind of almost get like a retro cover in a way, where everyone's framed like it, and it says like it has Doom Patrol across the top, has the world's strangest heroes tagline, and there's even like a approved by the Comics Code Authority. And I didn't really bother looking into it, but under it it says March number 94. I'm not really sure if that has anything to do with anything, but it might be something neat to look into. I don't know personally what it could mean at all, but yeah. And then the final pages are Cliff driving, and he's kind of running through the conversation he had with his mom in his head, and he drives straight off and I'm sorry I have to say this, a cliff, and crashes his car in a ravine, and it says next, "Hello Metal, my old friend." So I guess maybe Human Cliff only lasts an issue, and we'll have Robot Man again.
Here's the thing with that sequence that's kind of amazing to me is that all the Cliff moments are Frank Miller homages to The Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah.
Because he's got the mustache like Bruce has at the beginning of the book, and then when he drives off, the panels are laid out in the same way of Bruce in that car race at the beginning of Dark Knight Returns.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
Yeah, now that you say that, I can't not see it. You're right. That's great. And I will say, just another thing, the sections where it's Cliff and the sections where it's everyone else is like very colorful, kind of in the style of Doom Patrol so far. And then Cliff is just almost, I think it's just about black and white. It's very minimal coloring. And yeah. The only other thing I have to note real quick, it looks like Keeg, the negative spirit, I think he has new lettering now, where he it's just a slightly different font, and sometimes the E's are just 3 lines. I don't know. I thought it was a nice little touch.
You could, when you really boil it down, the plot of the main Doom Patrol sections of this, you could describe the theme as like cosmic body positivity.
That was exactly what I was thinking.
And I wanted to point out, as far as little tiny things, in the beginning of the issue, I'm pretty sure. So there's the credits, and it says Doom Patrol created by. I'm pretty sure it says Arthur Drake. His name is Arnold. So the letter
does say Arthur. Yeah.
The letter goofed up, unless that's like some weird third level like joke within the series. I obviously wouldn't know.
I can't imagine. Just going off this panel some more, I feel like they usually say Doom Patrol created by Arnold Drake and I think Bruno Premiani, usually when they credit that. But the other neat thing is, I think I mentioned it earlier, there's kind of 2 different title like pages or panels where it gives you all the credits. And the first one is big neon signs saying like written by Gerard Way, art by James Harvey, yada yada yada. But you can actually see that in the background when it shows the other like the rest of the credits, and I think that's like a kind of neat little, just like continuity. Yeah. But overall, thought it was a good book. Interested in seeing where they go. seeing if Robot Cliff comes back with this not real Cliff that, it's Doom Patrol.
Was this your pick of the week?
It was not, actually.
Ooh.
Now,
I was sure that this was going to be your pick.
Huh?
I was thinking very much so think this is going to be your pick of the week because I know you like the first series.
Ooh, yes. The first Gerard Way Doom Patrol series is very good, and I think one of the reasons this isn't is just I think I like Gerard Way's Doom Patrol when you can read more of it at a time. Like, I think that's going to be a good thing. But honestly, rereading it now, it's really good.
There's never any harm in wanting to be left with wanting more. So that is
definitely.
Yeah.
Now we're going to move into the real DC books. Starting with Justice League 27. This is another James Tynion issue, and this is part 2. So I guess he's doing this, maybe doing this whole arc and a whole trade eventually. So we learn. Well, we don't learn. I learned that John Jones, Martian Manhunter, was experimented on by Lionel Luthor as a kid, and Lex Luthor freed him when they were kids. And so Martian Manhunter has this weird soft spot for Lex Luthor. And that plays into how he's been trying to find him, despite Luthor being presumed dead. And he stumbles on a trap, basically, and is held captive by Professor Ivo and obviously his Amazos. And the main Justice League, they're dealing with all this monitor bullshit. We have references to Crisis on Infinite Earths, Infinite Crisis, Metal, and all that shit, how the multiverse, there were infinite, then there were 52, and now there's this dark multiverse and all that shit. There's a cool-ish moment where Barry has a memory flash. It's like, oh shit, I died at some point trying to deal with this bullshit. Though I think the art, I like the art by Javier Fernandez, I believe, but certain segments are not so great. Like this Barry flashback to Crisis, kind of underwhelming compared to what you might expect from this moment. Hawkgirl rescues Martian Manhunter. Suddenly, a dozen Amazos just fall out of a closet, but they're not actually a threat. And their alternate universe child, which I guess he was recovered during the last arc.
Yeah, he was.
He's hanging out with Starman because he's supposed to be hanging out with Mara, but Mara gets distracted because someone says the word hyper time.
Ryan Choi and the other scientists were working on their end of this whole totality thing, and so they got lost with hyper time.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges of this book, which I guess is a good challenge to have if you're trying to write this epic, large-scale kind of run, is that a lot of the characters, there's not enough room to really show what all the characters are doing. We get the one panel of the science people. There's a quick Detective Chimp reference, but we don't check back in with that squad or any of the other squads in this issue. But the Hawkman, Martian Manhunter child is hanging out with Starman. And it turns out Lex is alive, and through a hologram, he says hi to Martian Manhunter and Hawkgirl.
Well, we knew he was alive, but
yeah, we did.
In a neat little drone that kind of looks like the Legion of Doom headquarters.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought this was going to be a Brainiac thing or something.
Well,
I could see that.
Brainiac's still in the Legion of Doom headquarters with Lex.
I like this issue. I'm enjoying this kind of plot, I guess.
It feels more like a Justice League book.
Yeah, this feels, and it's weird because again, this issue specifically is not written by Scott Snyder, but Snyder is clearly doing his Morrison cover band, and he doesn't quite get there, but it's still cool that anyone's even attempting a Morrison-esque story. Like this kind of ridiculous plot with Crisis references and monitors involved and alternate universe children and stuff like that. This feels like it could have been out of JLA or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Rather than the samey kind of unnotable Justice League books that have happened a lot, frequent for much of the time for the past decade plus.
Just a random thing I wanted to throw in that I noticed. The son of Shaira and Jean, or whatever he is, I believe when he's talking to Will Payton, he says he's from a fake multiverse. And I'll be honest, I haven't read any Justice League besides this recently, so this was a very interesting read for me. But I think that concept in general is something that's neat, and I kind of hope they go forward with that. But also, like, what in the hell is a fake multiverse? Like I get we've always had a DC multiverse where you have more than one universe, but now do we have multiple multiverses? And I think that'll be interesting if that like goes through that way. And they kind of go like a reverse course almost.
Yeah, he's from the last arc where it's all revealed that the Monitor's brother put together this like facade multiverse, and like that's how he saved his universe. And I didn't really love that arc until like the final issue. That's the only issue of that arc I liked. But yeah, Shane is the name of their son.
Yeah, Shane.
And he was able to come over because he was actually able to see that it was a fake universe, and when it was all a facade the whole time. So there's something more to him. But
Makes sense.
I'm liking where Justice League's going when at least Tinian's writing it. Lois Lane #1 from Greg Rucka came out this week, and it's my pick of the week.
Same.
This has everything I want from a Greg Rucka written book. We got investigation, intrigue. The question shows up.
Well, not the question. A question.
But here's the thing. When's the last time we saw Renee Montoya in a DC comic book?
She was used in like late New 52 with like when Manipul was on Detective Comics, but we haven't seen her as the Question since pre-Flashpoint.
Yeah, and with Bendis getting at DC, we've seen Vic Sage back, and now Greg Rucka gets to pull out Montoya. I'm living my best life right now. I get two of my favorite characters back.
Yes, I guess they both get to be the Question at the same time, which is fine. I'm okay with that.
Just question why there's so many questions. It's simple.
And interesting because obviously Mike and I and other members of S.H.I.E.L.D. have been seeing Montoya pre-question a lot in No Man's Land.
Well, what's funny is not only we've seen Montoya pre-question, but we've got a very early story of Rucka writing her for what might have been the first time. So once again with two of these shows going on, we're seeing very early Rucka, and now we're seeing Rucka here. And I think Rucka came back on this book like top of his game, right? Like, would you agree?
This was a fantastic book.
I mean, I loved Mike Perkins' art too.
It definitely fits.
The whole story here is Lois Lane's uncovering government conspiracies. And this doesn't fully play into Event Leviathan like I thought it was. But I thought a lot of this issue is Lois writing a story, going through her story writing process, and then she goes and exposes government secrets right in front of the White House, right at the White House Press Journal, and gets kicked out.
Well, this is my part where I'm a little iffy on how I feel about this because
it's very on the nose to the current landscape.
Yeah, the first quarter of the book, it's ripped from the headlines parallels, but it's not. Number one, it's definitely not exaggerated. It's not explicitly stated for the most part. It's kind of like jagged sound bites. And like there's a moment where Lois Lane clearly tweets at President Donald Trump angrily, but it's not explicit or anything. But then the last quarter of the book, it's just like, hey, we're talking about migrant centers or whatever migrant detention centers, whatever the the various names are for them, depending on who's talking about them. Like, this is just literally Lois Lane reacts to Donald Trump's policies.
Yeah.
At the end of this issue.
And you can't not say it was a pretty cool moment, though. Like,
yeah, it's cool.
It was really well done.
It's just, it at the very least, this sets it in a time and place. Even though they never say Trump's name at all, and there's really no other explicit names or even explicit references. This is, this book will always be set in 2019.
I think even with saying that and all of that, like, I think with how implicit they make everything, I think it's something that will age perfectly fine. Like, I think it'll always make sense for that to be a thing, even if the issue is no longer an issue, say, 10 years from now or 20 years from now, or who knows how far along down the line. I think it's written well enough that it'll always make sense given the character and what Lois Lane, strives to do, even if it isn't, contextually accurate 50 years from now or whatever.
Yeah, his Lois is perfect.
Oh, it's amazing.
The dialogue with Clark
also great.
Well, and with Montoya, where she parallels journalism and espionage, that was a really cool concept. And back to Clark, we have a full page of sexy shower time with Superman, which was really fun.
We have sexy Superman lying in bed, and Mike Perkins clearly gives us the greatest look at Superman we've ever seen. But I liked Rucka handling the fallout from the big kiss that happened in Bendis's run in Action, where, yes, Lois Lane saw Superman right in the middle of everywhere, and she kissed him. Obviously, we know they're married, but to the public, Lois Lane's married to Clark Kent. So we get a moment where, like, people keep, like, disparage her, and there's this moment where Lois calls it out. She's like, "Yeah, they'll call out me for it, but they're not gonna say anything of what Superman does," which I thought was a kind of true statement. That was currently the double standards for men versus women. But once again, a moment that's, like, clearly echoing climate in today, but I still think it worked. But the other crux of this is that Lois is investigating a story where one of her colleagues from Russia was killed, and that's why she sends Raina Montoya to go out and investigate. So we got this whole conspiracy that's going on, and we're going to see it unravel in these 12 issues. And what a beginning this was. Rucka's back at DC at the top of his game. Not that he really ever left. He did just write a pretty good long chunk of a Wonder Woman run. He kind of took a little bit of a break. And then I thought Mike Perkins was great on art. Kind of echoing a little, to me, it echoed a little bit of like a David Aja, and I can't remember, kind of a Michael Lark feel. So at least that's what I got from it. Obviously, Mike Perkins' style isn't like them, but the way the shadowing and the colors worked, I got that vibe from it, and I think it's the right vibe for the book. I'll open the floor to you guys. This is my pick of the week, obviously.
Yeah, we covered a lot of it already, I feel, at least my thoughts.
Yeah.
One thing I'd say is that, again, similar to his one-on-one run, in a way, this is Rucka returning to the well. Lois was pretty central to his Adventures of Superman run, like way pre-Infinite Crisis. So fans really like how he's handling her here. You can go check that out, and it's only like 3 trades or so. That she got like shot during that in the Middle East, and I'm interested to see this going forward. I think this is interesting because this is clearly going to be a very different tone from the Matt Fraction Jimmy Olsen book.
Which, I mean, I'm still looking forward to that Jimmy Olsen book.
Yeah. Dan, you have any?
All right. Marvel.
Nope. I think I said everything I want to. On to Marvel.
Over to Marvel, Captain America and the Invaders in the this book has a long title. Something about
Captain America and the Invaders, Bahamas Triangle.
Okay. This is Roy Thomas, Jerry Ordway, classic throwback team. Ordway I don't think he really did much Invaders work or really much Captain America work, but
yeah, he's
Ordway,
more Superman.
but Ordway, maybe his breakout gig before he got some of the Superman stuff was he was the artist for the initial run of Infinity Inc. with Roy Thomas, one of his Earth 2 titles, and eventually was replaced by Tom McFarlane. But so he's got his kind of World War II chops, and Ordway has a very classic style regardless. The caption says that we start in March 1941, I think. I think I actually wrote 42. And Cap still has the old shield before it becomes circular.
It's got the old map, too.
For those who don't know, Captain America's shield became circular because Marvel was sued by MLJ, now known as Archie Comics, because their character, the Shield, had this kind of emblem-shaped shield and predates Captain America as the first major patriotic-themed superhero in comic books. He's busting up some Nazi sympathizers at home, German Bund folks, which is interesting. There's a interesting documentary. It's a documentary short called, I think it's called Night at the Garden, and it's literally just like 15 minutes of mostly unedited footage of a German American Bund rally in Madison Square Garden before the U.S. entered the war, and it's pretty interesting. So people can go check that out. And he's busting up these Nazi sympathizers. Some journalists come over and take a photo, and this guy's called Mac, but that could be a nickname or anything, and it could be going over my head. But I don't know if this is supposed to be like a nod towards Jameson.
That's what I thought, and I thought the Mac was just like not actually his name, just like a hey guy kind of deal,
like dude or something. But if it's Jameson, that's kind of cool. I don't know that much about Jameson's backstory off the top of my head that now that I'm thinking about it, I think it would be interesting if there was a dive into that, and it's like Jameson, similar story to Peter Parker, started out as the lackey photojournalist. That would be interesting to tackle in a Spider-Man book. And then, way cooler cameo, Jack Kirby hands Captain America his shield when he almost forgets it for a second. This guy says he's got to get back to the drawing table. And then there's some more pretty cool history stuff. We move from American Nazi sympathizers to Edward VIII, the abdicated King of England. He abdicated because there was some kind of controversy over his wife, I believe. And he was kind of pro, not necessarily, whatever, it's all technical, and people didn't know the full specifics of everything. But he was kind of buddy with Hitler. And he was installed as the governor of the Bahamas, which at this point still very closely connected to the British Empire. And Roosevelt and Truman with him are going on a fishing trip and connected to this, which doesn't seem super smart. The U.S. isn't involved in the war fully yet, but the president and the vice president going on a fishing trip, when U-boats are in the Atlantic, seems kind of fishy, pun intended. But honestly, knowing Roy Thomas, and I don't think there was like a essay in the back. I may have skipped that. Knowing Roy Thomas, this probably happened exactly as it's shown here, minus Captain America. And Steve is undercover as Steve Rogers initially there. I think it's funny how he gets seasick. Steve Rogers initially can't handle the sea very well. Jim Hammond is there, and Namor shows up. And then, honestly, I kind of flew through the last quarter or third of this book because Roy Thomas in 2019 not the greatest scripter, but I enjoyed looking at the panels of Namor fucking up submarines.
It was cool.
Yeah.
I wish we had gotten Namor references earlier. I thought this was an enjoyable book. It's fun that they did one of these 80th anniversary one shots in this era, and they picked pretty much the perfect creative team to do so. This was a cool addition to the year-long celebration.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Didn't love it. It could have been worse knowing Roy Thomas. It wasn't as slow as the Marvel premiere that we read for the retro book last week. Thank God. I thought there was a good amount of action here to break up a lot of the talking, and I liked going back to 1941, seeing like original suit cap. I thought that was fun.
Yeah, I thought this was a neat read. I wasn't super like I don't love it or anything. I thought it was good. It's definitely not bad. I think Vince kind of not alluded to it. He straight up said a lot of the historical things that are taking place, but I think from like a historical perspective and like liking history and stuff, this was a really cool book because of how immersed in 1941 and American politics it was. But just as a book in total, it's almost forgettable in a way, but it's not bad by any means. And just a random throwaway thing, I know Vince mentioned like there's a caption somewhere that says it's 1941 and specifically like Tuesday, March 18th. But when Cap's getting into the car right before that Jack Kirby cameo, he says that it's this mission he's about to go onto the Bahamas is the third assignment he's had in his first 24 plus hours on the job. So
Yeah.
the reason he's all in his old stuff is because it's literally it's his first day as Captain America pretty much. And I thought that was a neat, like, here's where this takes place in his history.
Yeah. All right. That's all we got for the Bahamas Triangle. It's Immortal Hulk time. Immortal Hulk number 20, Ewing and Bennett. I feel like I could just go, it's great, and be done with it. But I have to talk more about it. We go back to the Green Door with Bruce talking to his father. It's implied here that David Banner is, I forget his father's name is David, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so.
I'm almost positive. I don't know why I would forget that, but
isn't his as well?
Well, it was in the show. I think it might actually be David Bruce Banner. It's David Bruce Banner in the show, but I can never remember. Bruce Banner in the comics is Bruce Banner to me. But it's David Banner implies that he's kind of behind all of these different personas of the Hulk coming out, saying that the Green Door, you're always coming and going, and every Gamma person is visiting here, but Gamma is much more than just radiation. It's almost like this magic like spell that kind of befalls over the earth, and is more responsible for just turning people into weird monsters. And also there's Bruce gets visions of his mother there, and it's so something's leading towards that as Bruce kind of has a breakdown. We cut back to reality where the Hulk's fine. It turns out that the Red Harpy knew exactly how to kickstart the Hulk's healing factor is to just actually just kill him, and then it'll just reboot instantly. So the last issue was left. He was getting his heart eaten by the Red Harpy, and the Abomination was standing there. But Hulk's fine now, and he teams up with Red Harpy, who's Betty Banner, and they beat him, and they managed to free the dead carcass of Rick Jones out of it. So they're going to go do something with that while the this Gamma Squad of Sasquatch and Doc Samson and like kind of the rest of Alpha Flight are tracking down their whereabouts. And Doc Samson gets them to a hotel, and then we're left with Bruce kind of floating in space. I'm guessing in his head with this higher being talking to him, asking him what he is. We're seeing and what he'll become as like it's like this dead old carcass of Bruce. And the ending name of this was called Metatron. So I'm very intrigued to see where this is going. Immortal Hulk still continues to be the best book by Marvel. So that's all I got for that.
So he's not David Bruce Banner, it's Robert Bruce Banner.
Okay, there we go.
Definitely not the best book by Marvel is Uncanny X-Men.
Yeah, not ending strong on the show, are we?
I saw a very hot take comment weeks back how one would prefer Chuck Austin over Matt Rosenberg.
No, you wouldn't.
I'm coming around to it.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's because you have this weird nostalgic love for Chuck Austin. Would you?
No. That doesn't have to do with it. But Rosenberg's issues, for one, have almost. I think all of them have opened with a black page and a panel, and I think sometimes it's like a stupid.
It's not even a panel; it's a caption box.
Yeah, it's a caption box. Sometimes it's a stupid quote. Sometimes it's whatever. There's not really usually any context to them. In this one, it says, "This may be paraphrasing. This may be the last X-Men story. Not sure if I should say I'm sorry or you're welcome." And I don't know if that's Rosenberg or if this is supposed to be like Cyclops' narration. I don't know. You should say you're sorry.
We can only assume that once Hickman takes over, the X-Men as we know it are just getting royally messed with.
They're getting messed with in this run.
I mean,
the good thing here is Salvador Larroca is back, at least for this issue. Hopefully the next issue, which is the finale of the run.
I thought it's going to 23.
No, I think it's 22. The X-Men rescue Emma from the Hellfire Club, and with the government agencies, I guess Triage dies.
Yeah, at the final issue of this series, we gotta write down and go out every character that died in this book.
I'll go back to previous. Well, and I'm gonna go beyond that and just look at stuff Rosenberg has written, because you have to go back to, his New Mutants and stuff like that. We'll do the Matt Rosenberg death tally.
Okay.
Triage dies. Then Wolverine finds Gabriel, aka Velocidad, who's one of the lights from like the Matt Fraction, Kieran Gillen, Hope era with the lights. And I guess the government was using him to like replicate the Warlocks, and I don't know how that works, because his powers have to do with. Well, initially everyone thought he was a speedster, but actually he manipulates time on like a micro level, which is how some speedsters are explained. But that's his powers. I don't really know how the government is using him here, but to put him out of his misery and to stop that, Wolverine then kills him. So there's 2 dead. Emma spills the beans to all the X-Men, and they're like, okay, we're on your side now. And Sinister's just like in the corner still, and then isn't on panel for the rest of the book. This giant Sentinel, it's almost like a Nimrod-esque kind of design, shows up. They fight it for a second. Banshee dies. He's dead.
Yeah, but it was like zombie Banshee, so who cares?
Ileana's mutation is canceled out by the government dude pressing a button, because I guess all of the X-Men that were originally captured in like the beginning of this run had, like, the government had a failsafe where they could deactivate their mutant powers, like jumpstart the cure in them. And they only use it on Ileana, I guess, now that they're all back in range, which draws out the Hell-Child. And I don't know if this means that technically in a certain aspect, Ileana is sort of kind of dead. Now, another sort of kind of, I don't know if this is a death. This Hell-Child demon rips the gem of Sidorak like out of Juggernaut's chest, like takes off his armor, smashes the gem, destroys it, and then either ports him into hell or he's burning alive or something. I don't know if Kane Marco's dead now. And then, honestly, I thought like the action, especially before Ileana turns into the demon, when they're fighting this Sentinel, which pops up out of nowhere. It's kind of like the pacing's really jagged and stuff.
Yeah, it was hard to tell what was going on.
And I've actually found that in action sequences in several of the issues of this run so far. Where once we actually get into the action, things get really, really frantic frequently. And then the final plot point here is that Emma, through the help of Dr. Nemesis, Fabian Cortez, and Sinister standing behind her, I don't know how he factors in, she erases mutants as a concept from the entire public consciousness on Earth. So humans no longer hear mutants. They don't know what mutants are. They're still wearing stupid costumes, so it's a little weird when one of the guards who was just trying to shoot them a second ago is like, hey, let me help you up off the ground with all this explosion and debris surrounding us. And somehow in the process of doing that psychic feat, Emma has a shitty haircut and stitches on her head.
No, I think that's implied that that's how she's always looked after she got that chip in her head from the general.
I guess I figured it was like Dr. Nemesis, like maybe I guess it's implied Dr. Nemesis took the chip out.
Yeah.
And then that allowed her to do this insane feat. That's the issue. Next issue, I am certain it's 22 is the final issue of this run, the final issue of this era, pre-Hickman. It'll just be cleaning up the pieces. I don't know. Are they going to kill another character in the next issue or more? Hard to tell. You'd think it would just be putting everything back on the shelf, but Ileana is still running around as a demon. And I imagine most of the X-Men are going to have taken issue with what Emma just did. And I really just want this to stop.
I mean, it'll stop soon because Hickman is coming.
This run has been like just like a raging fire. And when we do the death count, it'll be ridiculous because he's just killed dozens of characters. And granted,
the only way we can do the death count justice is if we have someone playing a kazoo as you read the names.
Granted, a lot of these characters, like, oh, he killed Velocidad. Oh,
Blindfold's dead. Like,
yeah, it's like they're not crucial characters. I mean, granted, he killed Banshee, potentially killed Juggernaut.
He didn't kill Banshee. Banshee was already dead.
He killed Strong Guy. He's killed some major characters. Yeah. But then it's like, where the hell do we go from here? Does Hickman just totally hit the reset? Does he totally ignore this? Yes. Are these characters
come out and basically said it's a reset?
But I don't like resets either. So I don't.
And that's been my big critical thing is that he's going to come in for 2 years. They're going to full on reset. And then he's going to go leave and do his indie books again. And they're going to scramble for a year and a half. And then they're going to reboot it again.
I don't know. But this is, I don't know what editors are allowing this to happen.
Well, they're just allowing it to happen because Hickman's going to have free reign when he comes in. No one cares.
This is insane. This is so weird.
We liked this run when it started.
Sort of, yeah. And
we were down with it. We were gelling with it.
Yeah, and then you realize that he's
I don't know what I'm reading.
Then you realize that he's literally killing 3 characters every issue for like 12 issues in a row. It's insane. I don't like this run. It's so weird.
And here's my question. I know people are comparing it like, oh man, I'd want Austin back. This run is going to be so forgettable because it's going to be sandwiched in between a weekly Disassembled event that leads into Age of X-Man, which was more promoted than this, and then Hickman's relaunch. So at least you can say, at least for Chuck Austin, that everyone remembers that run because it was so terrible. It's almost worse. Actually, I think it is worse that this whole run is going to just not be remembered at all.
Well, again, it depends on how Hickman picks up from this run. It has the potential to be very remembered because he killed 30 characters. If any of that sticks in any way, there will be reference back and it will be remembered. But the thing is, Austin, Austin didn't. There's some really fucking stupid stuff like Draco, which granted, Jason Aaron propagated some of those concepts, etc. But Austin did kill characters. There's the like religious crazies arc where Skin is crucified. Squid Boy doesn't count, but like I'd almost rather take like insane, terrible shit over just this massacre. I don't know. It's weird. But that's Uncanny X-Men. Next issue is the last. I'll be glad for it to be over and even more anxious for the next era.
Dan, did you enjoy weekly comics this week? Was it a good week for you?
Yeah, I think everything I read I enjoyed.
Yeah, pretty much the same for the most part. Like I don't hate reading X-Men. It's just like it's now just like kind of fun fight scenes for me to look at.
I just hate comic books, to be honest. But
well, we knew that.
You've sat through all of our whining, mostly my whining, and
all right. Final roundup though. What was picks of the week first before you reveal the thing? Lois Lane for me.
Ditto.
I'm actually going to go with Sea of Stars with Lois Lane in a very close second.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah.
Reverse for me.
Yeah.
So the reveal, you sat through all this. Our retro book for next week is Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man number 73 from December 1982, which this is by Bill Mantle and Al Milgrom. And this is technically the first part of the not super formal arc, the Al Octopus War, sometimes known as the Many Arms of the Octopus. So,
right. Well, that's a pretty solid creative team.
So, well, I don't actually know about that, but it's a fondly remembered arc. We'll say that, and one that I think probably all three of us, and even lots of major Spidey fans are not familiar with. So
I think McNamara will be back next week. He'll be back from his vacation. So, and Ginger Dan, you said you're sticking around, yes or no?
I'll do my best to stick around for a bit, yeah.
All right. So we'll all be hopefully back next week then.
Assuming we survive the experience. Thanks for watching this episode. Tune in next time. Goodbye. Get home safe. Watch out for bed bugs.
Bring me back something nice while you're at it.